Good morning, everyone, for the next minute. I can see lots of screens coming on, which is fantastic. If you feel comfortable, it would be great if you could put your cameras on. I am, if you don't know me, an extrovert by nature, and I love to see people's faces. It's much harder to get excited when you are looking at blank screens with initials on it. But I know many of you might be doing different things, like maybe cheekily looking at a website or your email, or maybe having lunch. But if you can, that would be great. I'm going to give it another minute, but then I'm going to get started. Now, for those that don't know me, my name is Christine Khor, and I'm the CEO and founder of Peeplcoach. I can see the webinar won't let us turn our cameras on. Teacher, would you be able to change the permissions to allow the cameras to go on, please? That would be wonderful. So yes, my name is Christine Khor, CEO and founder of Peeplcoach, and we are here today to share some of our learnings regarding how to calculate and discuss the ROI in leadership and development. So as way of background, coaching and Peeplcoach is my third career, and previously I have worked in large organisations such as, Kraft Foods and Simplot Australia in marketing roles. And every time I tried to get some budget, it was always, what's the return on investment? What's the sales lift? How can you justify this expenditure? And so I'm very used to having had to do that. As a CEO of a business and as a leader, there are always competing priorities. There's never enough time, enough money, enough people to get all our priorities done the way we want to do it. So again, it's, the projects that get funded, the activities that get, invested in are those that can prove an ROI. Recently, we were at Peeplcoach sponsored the L&D Symposium, and it was actually really nice. It was in the Hunter Valley. And over again, we had the opportunity to meet some of the most amazing L&D and HR professionals. And we all knew, as you all know here, the importance of training, development, especially now when it's so chaotic and so, so uncertain with AI transformation. But in the next sentence, it was, but my budgets have been cut. So I guess that's what really sparked the reason for today's session. So I'll take you through this, but we are going to make it interactive. So who are we? Our goal here is to unlock people potential through the democratization of coaching. And today we're going to be sharing with you some of the tips and language you can use to really define and highlight your return on investment. So our purpose here is to unlock people and organisational potential, and we do that through our coaching methodology. So what are you going to learn today? You're going to learn what are the costs of non-investment. Now, I know that you as L&D and HR professionals already know this. The bigger thing is, how are you communicating it? How can we put it in the language that the budget holders understand? What is ROI and how do we calculate it? We also then not just want to get the money, we want to make sure that when we get our investment, that we are investing in the right types of programs to get maximum impact, so that can snowball and we continue to get investment, because we all know that that's what we need to do to lift the capability of our organisations. And then we're going to take you through what we call the rolled calculator, which is our return on learning dollar calculator. At the end, you'll be able to download that so that you can use it for yourself. So, sadly, the characteristics of lots of L&D investment, and, if you are an organisation where this is not the case, please tell us. We want to hear some good news stories. But unfortunately, with many of the conversations we're hearing, is that L&D investment is seen as discretionary. when it comes to leadership development to a level, and especially executive coaching, it's often looking backwards. So it's a senior person who's leading a team who has perhaps got there because they're a great technician, so a great marketer, salesperson, finance person, but they're lacking some of the nuanced leadership skills. So you're bringing in a coach to look backwards. It's compliance focused, so the stuff that must be done, so sexual harassment, psychological safety, OH&S, and it's often at the middle level focused on skills, so how to improve a technical skill such as project management or something specific rather than overall leadership. Now, all of these things, well, you know, the third three are very important. The issue is that it's seen as discretionary. And when you think about it, with AI now being the greatest equalizer, so now information is ubiquitous. You know, with $30 a month, you can get any information that you want. So that's not actually going to get us create competitive advantage. What is going to create competitive advantage is the creativity, the discretionary effort, the innovation, the commitment, the loyalty, the engagement, the productivity of our teams, and that's driven by strong leadership. So the fact that, unfortunately, leadership development investment is seen as discretionary is an issue. We know it's important, but we need to know how to prove it, and we need to learn the language of numbers. Now, for the majority of people here, you're probably HR or L&D people. What we're motivated by, and I'm one of them, is we're motivated by impact on people, we're motivated by behaviours, we're motivated by lifts in skills and competencies and communication and less turnover. But often we don't speak in that language. What we need to learn how to speak to is percentages of growth, percentages of change, and how does that lead to the bottom line. So what I really want to do in this snapshot, and if nothing else out of this, session that we're going to spend together, if you can start to think about how to gather this information, use our role calculator and present yourself in a way that talks some numbers. When we have worked with our clients to do this, we have got further down the line and got, increased budget. So things to think about when we are calculating the cost of poor leadership or the flip side, the cost of lack of development, is annual turnover rates. So this should be information that you can get relatively easily in your organisation. If you can't, we have embedded some of the research data in our role calculator, but additionally to that, in this presentation, I'm going to give you some research, some data points so that you can see what the ranges are. So the things that you would need to know to really prove the ROI of your development would be annual turnover rates, right? You need to know or make an assumption of what's the replacement cost. So if somebody leaves your organisation, what does it cost you? Now, at a flat cost, some of the research says it costs 2 to 3 times a person's annual salary to get them into the organisation. So that includes lost productivity, burnout of the other people that's looking after their role when they're when it's vacant, the cost of the manager's time, interviewing, lost productivity, training and development, to get them onboarded and that sort of thing. Engagement scores by your team or manager. So for every percentage point of drop of engagement leads to a drop in productivity. So again, if you're investing in people, if they're motivated, if they're inspired by their leader, actually you're going to get more productivity. And in fact, there is another research study that I read that if a person is engaged and committed to their leader, to their manager, they have to have at least a 20% increase in salary before they decide to move. So what does that mean? Now, I'm just going to use round numbers because I love numbers, but I can be a bit simple. So what that means is if you've got someone reporting to you that's on $100,000 and you work well, they trust you, they're inspired by you, they feel that they can achieve their goals, they would have to get an offer in another organisation of at least 120,000 before they will consider moving, right? Why? Because the switching costs are too high. Because what it means is I could get 20,000, but is that manager going to be as good as this current manager? If your leader, if you do not like your leader, if you do not feel inspired, if you do not feel empowered, you will move for, $3,000 or $4,000, right? Because you're not working there for the person, you're working there for the money. So again, if you think about investing in your leaders to increase their capability, their engagement, and the way they deliver, think about what that could be costing you or saving you at the bottom line regarding turnover. Revenue per employee metrics, and what that means is for every organisation, we have a certain amount of employees. So let's say we've got 100, and then we have revenue that the organisation generates. And what the rule of thumb is that when you, for every employee, they must deliver 2 to 3 times their salary. So if a person's on 100,000, they must deliver, we must be able to deliver revenue of, 2 to 3 times. And what that shows is their value, because of course, like any investment, you don't put your money in the bank to get no interest, or you don't buy shares to get no growth, right? So you don't hire people to add no value. So you want people to add some productivity and some value and revenue to your organisation. Time to productivity for new leaders, and it says depending on the role, it can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months. Legal and compliance incidents, especially now, there's key issues regarding psychological safety, sexual, all sorts of bullying things. So and directors are now legally liable. So ensuring that your leaders are doing the right thing is really, really important. And in fact, I spoke to a client the other day, and they said that they were taken to court during probation period for not extended during probation because the person had, quoted psychological safety issues. Now, they were proved correct in the first place, so it was they were proved correct, so there was no issue, but it was a lot of time, right, to go through the legal process and costs. So what you want to do is minimise that. Workers' compensation plans. And finally, something that's often forgotten is customer satisfaction and scores by, for the organisation. And think about it. Every person in an organisation, a frontline leader, the accounts payable or receivable person, the procurement person, our ultimate goals is to meet our customers' needs. Now, our customers might be a manager, a business, might be a consumer, but ultimately we all need to be working towards delivering value to our customers or consumers. And the more engaged your people are, the better they answer the phone, the more openly they, pay bills or receive bills, and it leads to customer satisfaction. And as I'm going through this, I want you to think about, because I know that you've all got experiences of turning up to a store or dealing with a supplier or working with someone that is just not happy, and you can feel it. Like you can feel their discontent versus walking in and working with someone that they love their job. You love the store. I mean, I know I go into bed I love bed shoes. I mean, I love shoes, but I love bed shoes. I know when I go in there, the people are so awesome. Too often, I buy 2 pairs instead of 1, right? But that's because they like their job. I don't always get that at some other shoe shops that I go to. So I want you to think about that, and how do we quantify that cost to talk to the holders of budget. So I wanted to, there's a lot of numbers here. Do not get scared. We can send you this slide, but I just wanted you to think about at the highest level, if you're a 200-person organisation, right, what are some of the costs, right? So at the moment, and this is all research-based, and I've got all the sources, later on, but I didn't want to clog up this slide. If your average turnover is 20%, right, poor leadership accounts for 73% of that. Right, so that is leaders not being inspiring, and let's even take the word inspiring away. Leaders not doing their job, leaders not communicating, leaders not coaching or training, leaders not setting deadlines, leaders not helping their people be successful, right? And if you think about, if the average salary is about 90K, that turnover alone would be costing a 200-person organisation somewhere between $3.5 to $7 million. So there's one data point. Now, if your turnover is higher than that, And I spoke to a client the other day that one of their divisions is at 55% turnover, right? So think about that. That means like that's nearly 3 times. It's 21 million for a 200-person organisation. And by the way, they're bigger than that. So it's a significant dollar. Engagement and productivity. Australian engagement stats, so sadly, and look, everything's a bell curve. They say 14% of employees are highly engaged. So feeling wonderful, happy to work the extra hours or do extra, believe in the mission, believe in their manager and so forth. About the same 15 to 20% are actively disengaged. So I'm looking for a job, I'm doing the minimum, I'm on performance management, I don't really care what happens here. And then, but there's, and then there's the middle area that are, yeah, I'm okay. Now, the reason for the 86% that are not highly engaged, 67% of that is because of poor managers. And again, think about it. When you have really trusted your leader, you've gone over and above. When you've been clear of your mission, you've been clear of the value that you can add, you've been given the resources, even when you haven't been given the resources, right? But you know that it's important and you trust your manager and you're doing it, you will go over and above. Now that dollar, nearly 2 million in lost. Now, with the bottom section there, again, I don't want to go into it too much, is basically saying if you implement an effective leadership development program, you could save or add back in somewhere between 500 and 2.8 million in turnover costs, or somewhere between 540 to give or take $1 million in engagement costs. Right? So don't have to remember all these, but we're talking big numbers for a 200-person organisation. Revenue per employee, again, goes up. And you can see that well-led teams generate 21% higher revenue per employee. When you talk about which then, with the right leadership development, can be anywhere between 2 million to 4.5 million improvement. Time to productivity for new leaders, untrained managers can take 12 to 18 months of full productivity. And here's an interesting thing, right? With our training and development, because it is so tight quite often and limited, we focus in on high potentials, right? And it's seen as part of a reward, sometimes remedial, but like these people need it. And, normally for existing, because the philosophy is, we better not do it for a new leader. We don't know where they're at yet and they might leave. We don't want to spend money. And that all makes absolute perfect logic until you look at the numbers. So if you think about managers that are just stepping up, new managers, if you do not train them in the beginning, they could take 12 to 18 months to get to full productivity. What is that costing you? And I guess our mission, which is to democratize coaching. I mean, in my dream state, when I was lying there before we even started Peeplcoach, my vision was, imagine a world where, as you stepped up into your first leadership role, you had a coach by your side to help you for the first 12 months. Because I bet each and every one of you that is a leader, that those first times when you move from being a peer to a leader, it was horrible, right? It was scary. Your friends were no longer your friends, and you had to have tough conversations, and you had to, ask them to do things, and you didn't know how. And if you're not a leader at this point, I'm sure you've reported into a leader that wasn't trained as they stepped up into their first new role. And remember back some of the things that you felt being led by that untrained person. I mean, I know being a doctor's slightly different, but imagine, you don't want to have your surgery with the learner surgeon that's done a quickie, qualification. You want someone that's well versed and trained in leading you, right? So what does that cost you? It costs up to $225,000, and this is all average on research of untrained new leaders. So again, you train them, you could get $45,000 to $78,000 in improvement of training a leader. Now, I just want to put in frame of reference, what does it cost to get that? So our base program at Peeplcoach, our emerging leader program, is $3,000. So just thinking about that, a new leader gets promoted, the potential cost could be $225,000. We could get an improvement of somewhere between 45%, 45K to 78K by investing, and it costs you $3,000 to do it, right? So that's like backing a long shot at Melbourne Cup, right? You really want to get that $3,000 to get $78,000. Like you'd make that bet, wouldn't you? And so I want you to think about it like that. And then when we then present to our budget holders, we can speak in that sort of language. Maybe not about the Melbourne Cup, because you don't want to make it feel like it's a gamble. Returns on legal compliance. So we did an estimate, again, research-based, that the average company could spend up to $175,000 on legal issues. So if we can reduce some of those compensation claims, your return could be anywhere between 90 to 168. That one seems to be a metric that budget holders take more awareness of, and because it's a cost, right? So psych theory shows that we are more predisposed to avoiding loss than searching for gains. So we will change our behavior generally to avoid doing something wrong, failing, losing something, than we will to get a win. So because legal compliance is about I go to court and I have to pay a fine, or I have to pay something, that number is really important. Also, it's a number that gets measured a lot, so safety numbers and that sort of thing, and in annual reports, legal costs and compliance gets measured. So so understanding that number and the reasons why, so what part of psychological safety or other thing or poor training is leading to this, could be a really good metric for you to understand. And finally, customer satisfaction impact. This one's harder, and you have to really speak to your marketing teams and get your head around how to measure it. But if you think about a poor manager, and this is, again, data that shows can lead to 10% lower customer satisfaction, especially in your frontline leaders. So if you're thinking about branch managers, if you're in retail, or customer service, or your salespeople, if you've got bad leadership in any of those areas, if you've got those people front-facing talking to customers, and those customers become disengaged because they had a complaint, or they had a query, and the phone didn't get answered, or didn't get answered well, and you drop by 10%, what's that costing you? Right? How many sales are you losing? And remember, every complaint that you get, there's probably 10 or 20 or 30 people behind there that's not complaining because they can't be bothered. They're just not going to buy your product, and they're going to badmouth your product or service later on. So leadership development, what can it do? It can result in 10 to 18% growth and revenue gains of 50 to 90K. So on a basics and spending of some dollars, and we put our standard program in there, what it says is, by investing some money in effective leadership development, and not all development is the same, and I think you guys know that, you can generate anywhere from 10 to 1. So for every dollar you spend, you get 10, or every dollar you spend, you get 30 back, right? Which on the size of a 200-person business could be anywhere from $4 to $6 million. Now, I know this sounds really, really, they're big numbers, and you might be sitting there going, we'd never put 200 people through a leadership program. I might only be able to put one person or two people or three people. I want you to even think about that. The language of saying, for every dollar that I put in for this person, so if I spend $3,000 on a leadership program, I'm going to get 30,000 back at 10 times. 10 times. For 30 times, I'm going to get $90,000 back. So for $3,000, I'm going to get $90,000 in increased productivity, decreased recruitment costs, increased engagement, increased innovation, no legals, no recruitment. Right? It's as simple as that, putting it into that language. But what we need to do as L&D professionals is to think in that way. What is the return on the investment of this effort and of these resources? So why is it important to invest now? Again, I know I'm speaking to the converted, but putting it in the language of psychological safety. We all know the legislation is there. Changing workforce demographics. Now, there's two parts of this. One part is the new generation of employees coming through, which is Gen Z. I mean, this is the only time that we've had up to 5 generations in the workforce, and each of those 5 generations have very different communication styles, expectations, their own value set. And in fact, Gen Z is the first one that is claiming, and please look at McCrindle research. I love McCrindle research, has identified that empathy for the first time has come as a key leadership driver, right? So how we manage this generation to drive their innovation, you know, keep them with us longer, is changing. Your brand reputation and value is really important. So employees come to you and stay with you because of the reputation of your leaders, of your organisation, your purpose. Yes, there's hygiene factors like where your location, how much you pay, the type of job, obviously, but they're hygiene factors, right? The rest of why they stay and deliver more to you is all these other things. The other thing about change at the moment is, you know, if you're not thinking about AI, what's happened, but every organisation we're talking about is thinking about AI transformation. How do I embed it? How do I lead it? And, you know, the new thing is, you know, as a leader, we need to learn how to lead human people, that makes sense, and virtual employees. And how you communicate to those two sets of employees is completely different. As having a human employee, you've got to have empathy, you've got to have coaching skills, you've got to have curiosity to understand, you know, you have to learn a communication style, and you have to learn very different communication styles depending on the age of the leader, their background, you know, or their education, their role, all those things. With agentic, AI, it's very directional. It's very precise. Your prompts have to be spot on. It's very direct. It can be abrupt. So as a leader now, we need to be able to flex in and out of those two. And that is a little bit like going from left hand to right hand. Now, I don't know for you, I'm a right-hander. It's really hard for me to right and left hand. But to be successful, I'm going to have to learn to be both. Right now, this is going to be something that we're going to have to learn over time, but how are we investing in our leaders to be able to give them those two types of leadership skills and communication skills? The other thing is profit is driven by engagement and retention. So again, another research study showed that the cost of disengaged employees driven by poor leadership overall is $201 billion in Australia. So that's the quietly quitting. That's the people that are stressed that aren't delivering, that are delivering at 50% productivity. That's the people that are, you know, not turning up, basically, absenteeism, all the rest of it. And so they're the reasons why we really need to invest now. And again, with the rise of the middle managers particularly, who are, I believe, in the hardest role because they're implementing the strategies from above. Sometimes they understand why, sometimes not. They're having to communicate and inspire, you know, their team members below them, and they have the least amount of training. They have been basically ignored as we've fixed all the other problems within organisations. So hence the big burnout in that area. If any of you are in that area, are you feeling it? I'd be really interested to hear. Again, as professionals, you've probably heard of the forgetting curve. So I think part one is about we've got to prove the evidence to get the investment in the first place, and then we've got to be able to make sure that we are spending the money and get the biggest bang for our buck. So whatever you do, and I'm sure if you're L&D professionals, you're already working on this, is making sure that your activities reverse the forgetting curve. So the forgetting curve basically says that within 6 days, you've forgotten about 70% of what you've learnt. It's actually a bit more than that, 9%, right? So, and we've all been there. We've all gone to a 2-day course. We've all eaten too much. We've all been incredibly inspired. We all take lots and lots of notes, hopefully. We all go, oh my goodness, I'm going to change that. And then within a week or two, you're like, oh, I went to this great course, but I can't remember what it was, right? That's the forgetting curve. And if you think about now, that we have a less attention span than a goldfish. So it's about 8 seconds. If you're younger, so that's younger, so the younger generation coming through that have been so indoctrinated with social media, theirs is like under 7 seconds, right? So what we need to do to make sure that we not only get the money for investment but embed the learning is really critical. And we all know old school is not working. Sitting there for 2 days taking in a lot of information without any activity is no longer working. Key principles, and you've probably heard of this, it's really thinking about, and this is how all our programs have been created in a really practical way to deliver results, is making sure that there's a what's in it for me, for the individual. A lot of training that we implement, it's driven by the organisation who then says, this is what I need. The best way to get engagement is to what's in it for the individual to commit to this training. Why would they carve out an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours or 2 days or whatever it is to do this? And it's really about communicating to them, if you do this and you do this well, this is what you're going to get out of it. People want choice, right? They don't want to be spoken at, as in the lowest common denominator. They want to be able to be self-paced, self-directed, and do things in their own time. Respect my experience. So a lot of the feedback that we've had in the past is I go to this training session or whatever, and it's all being dumbed down. It doesn't acknowledge that, you know, my role as an operations manager is different from my role as a marketing product manager. And, you know, you're talking about things that I already know or not relevant to me. So it's really about respecting the person's experience and where they're at, which can be hard when you're doing en masse training and development programs. But it's something for you to think about. How can you customize within structure? For us, we call it actually customizable structure. So we have sort of 80% of our programs are structured to meet L&D or organisational needs, and then we have this 20% overlay where people can sort of do a little bit of their own thing to make sure it's relevant to them. The other thing is, what we find is really important is I'm ready to learn. And it's as simple as I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make it drink, right? And again, too many of the programs when we hear about why they don't work, it's because we're putting people into programs that they either don't want to do for whatever reason. It hasn't been communicated in them of the value, so it feels like it's because they're in trouble and they're not good enough, and so they have to learn something, versus you are already great, but we want to help you be better. And sometimes it's just not the right time. There could be, you know, work catastrophes. There could be things going on at home. They could be doing their own, you know, masters or something on the side, and they're not ready. So just be careful about ensuring that people are opting in, because again, if you're going to measure impact at the end, and that's another thing to really think about, measuring pre and post performance, like what are your objectives in the beginning and what are your objectives at the end, and, you know, how have you moved, you're going to get better results from people who want to be there. Again, buy the gym membership. You can give away 10 gym memberships. Only the motivated people that want to get fit are going to go. The rest that you give it to, they're just not going to turn up. And then help me to understand, and it needs to be bite-sized. So 15 minutes, allow time for reflection, you know, that whole 70-20-10 rule. It needs to be activity relevant, in the job, some talking, some doing, some thinking, and then accessible across all the learning styles. Any questions on any of that? I know it's a lot of information before I go through and discuss our return on investment calculator. Any questions, any thoughts? Nope. Okay, so there's a QR code there. So if you do want to download that now, you can go to our website. It's the Peeplcoach Role Calculator. And basically, this is a really simplified version. If you want more complexity or more detail, just reach out to us and one of the team can take you through the more in-depth one for you to go through and to really calculate the return on investment on your specific programs. But in this case, for example, we looked at an organisation that wants to coach 50 people through one of our programs, and we put it at our developing leader program, which is sort of a mid-level middle manager. They might have anywhere between 3 or 20 people reporting to them, right? We said the average salary, including, superannuation and some on costs, is about 140. The organisational attrition rate or turnover rate, 15. The organisational annual value about 1.3 billion, and then how many individuals they have in the organisation. So we made some assumptions about that, and then what does that deliver? It delivers where is it? 2,660. No, hold on. I always get this wrong. 2,660% increase. So what does that mean? That for every dollar that is spent, you get $26 in return, right? Now, it sounds a lot, right? 2,600, like any CFO, any CEO would love to get. I mean, we're looking at, would love to get that sort of ROI, right? But in the simplest terms, if you say for every dollar you spend, you're getting about $26 back. No, sorry, $2,660 back, right? Every dollar, $2,660 back. That's what you're going to deliver, right? So if you spend $100,000, I better make it $1,000. What are you going to get back? So I want you to think about that. Now, I just want to show you this again. It's just a highlight. We don't have to go through it too fast. So I want you to get value out of this, not just a big People Coach sales session, but really being clear that any program that you put in place, we've identified what we call the PACT model. It needs to be practical, right? It can't have too many big words. It can't be too hard to understand. It can't be that you need a PhD to understand it. It needs to be practical and things that you can hear and then go, I can do that right away, right? It needs to be actionable. So practical, I understand it. Actionable, I can do it straight away. Coaching, so I mean, look, we're biased, so we're always going to say coaching is important. But your managers ideally should be able to do that. Maybe they can't. But coaching's not just a one-on-one experience, it's also a group experience, right? So a lot of our clients now are actually embedding group coaching into their programs to create that shared learning, and additionally to create that buddy system, especially when we do our sales programs, because sales programs, people get a little bit competitive. So if they can see, the regional sales manager over here is doing this thing and they've got a 10% lift in sales, the southern regional manager then wants to try it as well. So it creates this great competitive spirit, but it also creates shared learning. We also find actually group coaching is really essential for our women's programs, because that shared learning, and that's how women learn differently from men sometimes. And then the training component. So, you need to have modules, you need to have understanding. So anything you do, if it's got those things covered, those are the things that actually do reverse the forgetting curve. So again, making sure that, and even if you do have to have 2-day sessions, which you do, at least following this model where you've got breakout groups, you've got people doing things, you've got real life experiences. It's not just an academic case study from the US. It's, what's a case study for this organisation or your division. So making sure that you bring it in and making it relevant, and what's in it for me, for the individual. So here's some top 10 tips that we would always say: bite-sized information, customizable and individually relevant information, real role plays. What we find is, again, it's all really easy to say. And let's say courageous conversations, for example, if you're thinking about, because again, feedback that we get, whether you're a board director or a graduate, having tough conversations and giving feedback is one of the hardest things people do, right? So if you're doing any training and development, any leadership, including those live role plays, because it's easy to Google something, read something, and go, yeah, I know, I need to be calm, I need to be prepared, I need to not take things personally, I need to take the emotion out of it, I need to set a separate time in a private area, blah, blah. We all know that. You can Google that or chat GPT that. You know how to do that. The hard bit is actually doing it. It's getting over the fear that they might get upset, they might get angry, they might cry, they might not like you, that you might say it wrong, all that stuff. So actually practicing, again, stereotypes and cliches are there for a reason. Practice does make perfect. Well, not perfect. I don't believe in perfect. It makes it easier anyway. Incorporate the 3 R's of retention. So everything we do is write. I mean, it says 3 R's. It's a bit of cheat, but, you know, write down physically, like your hand movements. It works, neuroscience says it creates new memories. Recall, so saying it and then repeat it. The other thing about learning and development, and I guess, you know, it's hard because budgets are tight, so it's how do you do this cleverly, is maintaining consistency and frequency over a period of time. And I know that when we work with our clients, we do get pushed back around because our programs are 12 months. Can we do it in 3? And the way we explain it, it's as simple as this. You could have all the best ingredients. You can make organic ingredients, paid a fortune, you can put it in the oven, but if you do not let enough time for it to bake properly, it will just be a bunch of goo, right? And it's a bit like that with training and development and leadership development, right? If you have all the great components, if you've got all the materials, you've got the great content, but you squish it in to a short period of time, then people don't get the ability to reflect, to learn, to practice and to embed. So we would always say do deeper dive over a longer period of time. And our programs honestly go from sort of 9 to 12 months now. But don't try to squish it all in 1 month or 2 months or 2 days, even worse. Relatable, provide a safe space for learning. So again, some of the feedback that we get actually from individuals when we're coaching them is they sometimes feel that they're there because they're not doing a good job and that they're bad and that they're being punished, and that their results will then be pushed back to, you know, the leaders that be. And so really making sure, and we've honed the way we now present this. So again, sharing our learning is when you're launching with a cohort or leadership development and when you're speaking to your managers about their team members and how to language that and how to communicate that, being really clear this is a development for their benefit, not a punishment because they're doing things wrong. And obviously you already know you need to get your managers on board to allow the time and space for these people to learn. All your programs need to be scalable. So how do you make them for, you know, 1 or 1,000, and take place in the right environment? And what I mean by that is your organisation ready for this? Are your exec team committed to this, or is it a tick the box? Are the managers of the individuals committed to supporting? Are they aware what's going on? And again, what we've had to do is we've created our coaching guides now for managers so that they can in parallel support their employees as we're coaching them and working with them. Individuals also get coaching guide, the managers get coaching guides so that they can parallel coach. I don't even want to say train, but parallel work through it. And in the meantime, those managers are actually subliminally learning some skills as well. But that creates an ecosystem of learning and comfort and the ability to lift all leadership skills. So there are our tips of really how to you to get the best when you get the buck, how to get the best bang from that buck. Obviously I had to obligatory, this is why we're so great. So there's some of our feedback. Now I've left 15 minutes here deliberately because I know this is a really complex topic, and I'm happy to answer any questions or field any comments or anything like that. Any questions? Any thoughts? No? Well, either I've totally bamboozled you, bored you, or I'm absolutely amazing and I've nailed it and there's no question. If you don't have any questions, please, thanks Heidi. We'll send you this video. We'll send you a tip sheet and some information regarding some of these stats. please log on and get our role calculator. And if you do want any help in developing your ROI for your specific programs and what you're doing, please reach out to one of the team, and we're really happy to share with you and talk you through that. We know as L&D people how important this is. We just got to prove it to the people that own the budgets. Thanks for all the feedback, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and look forward to seeing you at our next masterclass.